and welcome to another video tutorial. Today we're going to be looking at timelines, what a timeline is within the Adobe Animate. Um, for the previous video, we learned how to launch Adobe Animate for the first time if you want to create an animation. We learned how to launch it. We saw the stage and some properties that surround it. So you have a short question here, an exercise to attempt to find out whether you still remember some of the basic steps from those videos. In case you have not watched it, I encourage you to go back and look at a few things before you join us right here. So you can take a minute, pause the video, and attempt the questions here. Okay, so without much ado, we will move on to our tutorial for today. So when you open Adobe Animate for the first time, it's going to look something like this. So you go to File, you go to New, and based on what the question requires, you change the width, the height, and sometimes the FPS or the frame rate can also be changed. But in this case, we'll keep it by the default 640 by 480 pixels. Right. So if we look closely down here, the bottom part of the stage is where we have the timeline. And today we just want to um, pay attention to the timeline and understand um, how it works. And once you have some strong understanding with the timeline, you'll be good to do some, will be set to, once you have a fair understanding about how the timeline works, it becomes easier to animate. All right. So when we talk about the timeline, it is basically your animation control center. Okay. It controls when things happen in your animation. So basically, that is what the timeline is all about. Um, so this here has a visual layout. So it has, first of all, to the far left, the control, the layer control. So this part here deals with the layer. And when you move from where the playhead is to your right, you have the frame display. So, and if you look closely at it, this timeline here can be increased. And so if I zoom in, you notice that I have some numbers right there. So 1, 2, 3, all the way to 10 for this side here. So you can actually have it increase from, 1 to 50 and so on. So if I scroll further to the right, you notice that we have a lot of frames right there. So the frames basically are the um, places where the animations will be happening, right? Okay. So, and again, we have some eye icons. We have the frame numbers. I've mentioned that. So, and then again, if you look at the top here, we have current frame. So where your playhead is located or the animation you want to, the object on stage you want to display, um, can be traced directly using the current frame. Okay. So for example, if you want to move and work in a certain frame, you can just type it right here and then you go there to insert a keyframe. All right. Now we have the playhead as I've mentioned already. And so, and then this rectangular squares or icons are referred to as the frames. So that is basically it with that. All right. Now we have frame types. Okay. So we have the frame, there are three main types of frames that you need to understand. The first one is the normal frame. So when I zoom in, you notice that there are some boxes right sitting here. So these are referred to as the frames. This rectangular shapes that you see here are referred to as the frames. And the first one here is the normal frame. Okay. They are just gray in color and they do not have any content on them. Okay. And then the next one we have is a keyframe. So keyframe, so a keyframe basically is when there's a change in the animation. When you draw a rectangular object, for example, or a rectangular shape on the stage, you notice that the frame here has now changed to have a dot right there, a circle, okay, a filled circle right there. So that is what is referred to as um, a keyframe, right? So there's a keyframe right there. So that's a black circle um, that has a content, right? And so if you define a change in animation, mostly we refer to that as a keyframe, right? So if I come to the 10th frame here, I'm going to use one of the options here. So one of the options here say insert keyframe. This one say insert blank keyframe, which is the third one we're going to be looking at. So we just mentioned the normal frame, which is what we are seeing here. And then the keyframe is when there's a change in animation. And then we have a blank keyframe, basically, as the name suggests, is empty or hollow. So it's a hollow circle. It means there's nothing on stage. Right. So if I move the cursor to the 10th frame here, I can right click and say insert keyframe. Or I can just click on this here that is equal to inserting a keyframe. All right. Now, what is happening here is very crucial. You notice that this here is the beginning of the animation, and this becomes the end of the same animation. However, the position of the animation has not changed, or whatever object on stage has not changed. But we mentioned that a keyframe is when there's a change, right? So what is going to happen is that this is the initial keyframe, and that is the second. And the second is having the same position as the first one. So I'm going to move this here away to show that there has actually been a change in position. So if I move it here, you notice that the square object that I've drawn is at the first stage, which is the starting point. When I move it to the end, it moves to the end. So basically, a keyframe has a start and an end, where there's a change in the way the animation happens. All right. Now, another way to do the same thing is to use the blank keyframe. So if I come to the 20th frame, right click and choose insert blank keyframe. Now you notice that although a frame has been inserted, there's nothing on stage. It simply means that no change has happened. But if I move the cursor a bit away, you notice that what was on this part of the frame is continuous to this point, right? So at this point, if I want to bring in a new shape, I can use the oval shape. And so in this case here, now I have a change on the frame. So I can refer to that as a keyframe. Okay. So when there's a change in the animation, refer to it as a keyframe. So these are some of the basic things you need to understand as far as animation is concerned and how they basically work. So to insert, you pick up the object and then place it on stage. And then if you are moving to the next frame, you insert a keyframe or insert a blank keyframe. So you either insert a keyframe and change the position to where you want the final object to go. In this case, what we did here, we changed the position from this to that, or you make use of a blank keyframe and then you indicate the change of the animation by placing either a different object on stage or move the initial position to a final position. So basically, those are some key areas you need to understand as far as animation is concerned. And those are the three categories as far as frames are concerned under the timeline. Now, another thing we are interested in here is layers. So when you want to change things on, um, if you want to animate every part, or let me say, every object need to be on a different layer. So let's put it this way: if you want to animate, let's say, a stick man walking, every part of the stick man needs to be on a different layer. Um, the point is that if they are all on the same layer, you cannot animate it or change the positions step by step differently on the same layer. So you have to put each part of that body of the stick man on a different layer. And to add a new layer, you just click on the plus button and then you have right there a new layer. Always a layer will come right, a new layer will always come above the old one. So I have layer one and layer two. To rename this layer, I just double click it and then type in the name of the layer that I want. So if it is going to be a stick man, so for example, I can say this is the leg. And so this will cater for only the leg. And then this is probably will cater for the right arm. But you can do layers apart from adding a layer with a plus button. You can also delete a layer with the delete button, which is the bracket sign here. So once you click on that, you delete. So if I have a layer, I can just click on it and delete it. So we can re-delete. We can also move the position of a layer by dragging it when we see the black line with the white dot, white circle right at the edge. So we can move layers up and down. We can glue them, and put them setting a keyframe. Um, then we have the loop, your skin, and the brief. Basically, when you click on it to make the animation repeat itself. So if you put the playhead here and you click on it, it just moves and then repeats the process. So basically, that is what the loops does. And then when you click on it again, it goes away. So that is how the loops behave. So this is basically to play the animation, and this is to adjust the timeline to see the frames curve. Depending on the number of frames you are interested in, you can increase in and increase them out. You click on this to reset it to a default setting. In a nutshell, that is basically some of the key elements about the timeline. All right, so this brings us to the end of another video tutorial. We'll continue in another session where we'll learn some interesting items about animation again. So till we meet again, bye bye.